Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. Around 2009, we had a unique problem. I was to give a presentation at a conference in Chicago. In the audience were around 250 people. What was the problem, you may ask? Well, these 250 people, most of them didn't know me. For a normal presentation, that is not an issue at all. That's not a challenge. But this presentation involved us trying to sell both the membership at 5000 BC as well as the brain audit. 2 products, or 1 product and 1 service in one go, to what seemed like a bunch of strangers. To be fair, there had been some calls before the event, so it wasn't like I was a complete stranger. However, the event was over 2 or 3 days, and there were many speakers. When you're an audience member and you have all of these different speakers, it's hard to pin down who you're going to listen to and where you're going to invest your money. But before I started the speech, I do what I tend to do whenever I'm in front of an audience, and that is to give them my philosophy, my way of life. One of the questions that I ask the audience is, why did they get in business? And almost everybody has the same answer, and that is, they got into business to have a better life, to have more satisfaction with their work, to spend time with their kids, and to have enough of an income so that they didn't have to look at the right-hand side of a menu when ordering a meal. The problem with business is that people get greedy, and there's no other way to say it. They want more and more and more. They want to grow the business. They feel this instability. They start off with almost nothing, then things start to move, and then they get, well, the word is greedy. And I talk about this philosophy in how we built our business, how we built the 3-month vacation, why we do that, and then I talk about how we live in New Zealand. Now, this seems very odd for a presentation which you're making, and in this case, it was about pricing. If you had just 45 minutes to make a presentation and 10 minutes of it went in your philosophy, that gives you even less time because you need another 10 minutes at the end to sell your products and services. But it is the philosophy that changes the way the audience looks at you. When we encounter a product, we usually have certain parameters, and that is price, reliability, but there's also this invisible factor, which is philosophy. And if you use that well and correctly, you'll find that people are more interested in what you do. So today's topic is about philosophy. The 3 elements that we'll cover are: do you have a philosophy? What goes into the philosophy? And the third would be, how long should it be, or rather, how short? Let's start out with the first one, which is, do you have a philosophy? As you probably know, I started out as a cartoonist back in Mumbai, India. And I do a lot of work for clients and was considered generally reliable. But the problem that I had was I had no philosophy. People didn't know why they would hire me. But I wasn't so astute about marketing back then. However, when we moved to New Zealand in the year 2000, that's when we had to make a new start. And it's usually when you make a new start that you have the chance to reboot, to refresh, reset whatever you've been doing. And when we got here, we realized that we were doing almost the same thing that we were doing in India, which is we were working, we were doing exactly the same thing. We were just in a different country, earning a different currency, and that was it. That's when we sat down and we figured out we're going to have a different life. And that is, we're going to work for 12 weeks and then take a month off. And this was way back in 2004, when our business was relatively young and you could say just above struggling. We were okay. But we decided that's what we're going to do. And usually the brain is a very cool tool in the sense that when you decide what you're going to do, it will then reset everything or reformat, as the case may be, and help you achieve that goal. But it has to be based on some kind of philosophy. And my thinking back then was that if I'm tired all the time, I can't help my clients. And that if I don't have enough downtime, I'm not going to read. I'm not going to upskill myself. And that, again, affects me and my clients. And to me, as radical as it sounded, it was important to have those levels of downtime where I rest and refresh. And that's what happens in those holidays. We go away, the mind gets clear, we come back. But even at the end of the year, when we don't go away, that's when I'll read and watch History Channel and do all kinds of things that enable me to do the courses, to do all the stuff that we do through the year. When businesses start out, I'm not sure that they always have a philosophy. But when they restart, there is this need to be something different. It doesn't always have to be a new start. It could just be a crisis. Here's the story of how Tinker Hatfield became the head designer at Nike. And it came from a crisis, and it kind of set the philosophy. Tinker Hatfield set the philosophy. Let's hear what he has to say in the series called Abstract from Netflix.
Nike had grown up very fast. We were leading the industry, focused on basketball and running. Reebok came along. There was this aerobics craze.
Reebok invented aerobics shoes. It's a whole new thing. They had the right product at the right time, and they actually passed Nike in size. So there was a bit of panic, and Nike was laying people off right and left. They were also thinking that they needed to upgrade their design group. So I was invited to be a part of a 24-hour design contest.
Tinker wasn't a shoe designer at the time. He was designing trade shows and displays and retail.
I worked the whole 24 hours. I didn't go to bed that night. Most of the other designers, I think, just tried to work off of what they were already doing, and wasn't really anything very unique in terms of storytelling. I came back in with a big presentation, sort of having fun with the fact that this was the perfect shoe to ride a motor scooter in. And then get out and then jog around and walk around a little bit. 2 days after the competition, I wasn't even asked. I was told that I was now a footwear designer for Nike. In a very short period of time, I pretty much became the lead designer.
It usually works like this. There is a reset. There is a crisis of some kind that requires you to reset. And that's when you decide, I'm going to have a philosophy. I'm going to do things my way. In 1976, Anita Roddick started up Body Shop. Officially known as The Body Shop, it was one of the first companies to campaign against animal testing in the cosmetics industry. The company's products were never tested on animals. And what they did was actively campaign for a ban on all animal testing. Now, they did other things as well. They supported community trade and activated self-esteem. They were committed to defending human rights and social justice. But think about it for a second and you see the philosophy of no animal testing coming through. stronger than everything else. After all of these years, 50 years have passed, people who've never used the Body Shop still know what it stands for and why they step into that store. When you take a company like Volvo, which is a Swedish automotive brand, what we have is a commitment to safety. So they believe that their cars should protect not only the occupants, but other road users. And so they have a long history of pioneering features such as the 3-point seatbelt, which they designed and they gave away free to everybody else. Every time you snap that seatbelt on, every time you curse and say, why do I have to put this on? That's the thing that saves lives. Year after year, whenever you hear of accidents, people flying through the windows, that's because they don't have the seatbelt. Volvo did that. They didn't have to do it. That was their philosophy. We're going to protect the people in the car. We're going to protect the people on the road. And that's kind of where philosophy comes from. It comes from this deep-rooted belief of I'm here to create some meaning. And if you look at the 3-month vacation, it doesn't sound like anything except something very selfish, but it is rooted in the belief that if I'm tired, if I'm not upskilled, then I can't help my customers as well as I know I can. So we have to create this level of meaning and what we want to bring to this world and to our work, which takes us to the second part, which is how do we go about creating this philosophy? The last few years have been difficult for many businesses, and especially hospitality. One of my friends runs a cafe, and she struggled through it, and now what she has is version 2.0. Except that nothing's changed about the cafe. It's the same location, it's the same space. They serve similar coffee as they did before. Maybe some of the coffees change from time to time, but that used to happen anyway. So what's the philosophy about? How do people know that you're somehow different? The main problem here is this item called the coffee cup, the paper cup, the takeaway cup, whatever you want to call it. The stuff that you get at Starbucks, the stuff that you have to take and run with it. You have to sit in your car and sip from it. It's not necessarily how a coffee should be drunk. And of course, this is my very strong opinion, but it is also the opinion of this owner of the cafe. She feels that a coffee needs to be savored, that the real flavor of a coffee happens, not when it's hot, not when it's got that cover on top, but when it cools down just a little bit. And that's when you can taste the flavors of a coffee. She also feels very strongly about the waste. Every time you take that paper cup, it doesn't matter that it can be recycled. The best recycling is just reuse. It's pretty much what we do at home. We don't use forks and spoons that we throw out after every meal. We don't use plates that we throw out after every meal. We don't have vessels that we chuck in the bin every single day. But we do that with coffee. And there's this humongous amount of waste that is created for no reason. Plus, it keeps the coffee super hot, which doesn't give you much of the flavor. When she restarted, she put up a little sign on the door. It was the name of her cafe, and it said version 2.0. And it said, I hope this place is about slowing down, about spending 10 minutes to enjoy your coffee break, because we all deserve it. And I hope that it's about reducing waste. We hope that you don't use the paper cup for reasons we all know already. And that's how you create a powerful philosophy. You create one by understanding what you don't want. And then that leads you to what you really want. Body Shop was against animal testing. It said so from the very start. Volvo was against losing lives for no reason at all. The 3-month vacation is about not having to work the whole time, but to have downtime on a regular basis. The lead designer at Nike didn't design the philosophy for the whole company. He worked on a single product, and then he worked with Michael Jordan and created a whole range of shoes that became very popular. However, if you're wondering how do you go about it, then think of the things that annoy you a lot. Think of the one thing that annoys you a lot. And you can very often create your philosophy based on that one thing. In the last episode, we talked about uniqueness and how every company has 2, 3, 4, 16, 25 features. You can't get that message across to people. It's a real struggle. Understanding that people can handle one thing and that you can take that one thing and elaborate it in greater detail. That's what you want to do. That's what you really want to do, because when you take that one thing that annoys you and then turn it into something positive that people feel very strongly about, then they choose to buy your products and services even without knowing what's inside. Which is why we were able to sell the Brain Audit and 5000 BC. They'd never seen it before. They'd never seen me before. But standing on that stage, the resonance was created by the philosophy, not by the presentation, not by the sales pitch, not by the testimonials, but by the philosophy. And this is an underlying uniqueness factor. It's not the uniqueness, it's what drives you and what sustains you that people see. And a lot of businesses don't have it. Or if they have it, they don't talk about it, which is the same thing. It's pointless if you have a philosophy and you don't use it, and use it well. And with that, we come to the third part, which is, how long should your philosophy be? I'm going to keep this really short. How long should your philosophy be? Well, it needs to be 3 lines maybe, so that I can remember as a client. I can remember what you said. If you start writing a philosophy like you see these mission statements that a lot of people make, first of all, it's full of hot air. It's nonsense. And you know it's not a philosophy because you can't say it to somebody else. You can't remember it. Even the person who wrote it can't remember it. So it's a lot of gibberish. It's a lot of nonsense that makes them feel really good in a boardroom. And you don't have a boardroom. You shouldn't have a boardroom if you can help it. You should have this drive. And so keep it really short. 3 lines maybe 2 lines. It really depends on what you're saying. But what annoys you? And how do you intend to overcome that and give that benefit over to your clients? That's what they want to know. That brings us to the end of this podcast, and let's do a quick summary. The first one was, do you have a philosophy? Well, a lot of people don't. A lot of businesses don't. And when you press the reset button, that's when the philosophy kind of comes to life. Not always, but usually. The second point was, how do we go about creating a philosophy? And it comes from annoyance. It comes from the thing that frustrated you. In general, businesses don't just start up because they want to make money. They start up because they have a certain drive to create something different, something better. You want to communicate that information, which is what the third part of today's podcast was about. Just because you have the information, don't dump the whole truck on me. Make sure that it's just a few lines and that I can remember it, because I'm going to tell someone else about it and they're going to tell someone else about it. And you don't want it to be this huge mission statement, which is rubbish. So what's the one thing that you can do today? And that is to look at the thing that annoyed you. Ironically, the owner of the coffee shop, the paper cup annoys her. That one thing that people ask for all day long, That annoys her the most because it represents not savoring the coffee's too hot. It's just a waste of paper and plastic endlessly. And so that annoys her a lot. And so she's built her philosophy, her version 2.0, on that paper cup. In fact, she even has many cups there that people can take to their office and they can just rinse and bring back. They don't have to wash it. She'll wash it for them. It shows you how deeply she cares about the philosophy that she has. And I guess you can do that too. So that's the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in psychotactics land. If you go to psychotactics.com/startup, what you'll find is a series called The Psychology of Starting Up. Why is this important? A lot of books, a lot of courses, they talk about starting up and they give you all the how-tos and stuff like that. That's not why this course was built. This course was built because there is a psychology, there is a mental thing that you have to overcome. There is a setup that you have to kind of do in your brain so that your startup is fine. And then, of course, there are the elements that you take from your brain and put on paper. It's kind of this podcast itself. You have all of these elements and then how you go about it and then how you implement it. And I think that if you go to that page and you look at psychotactics.com/startup, you will find that a lot of those elements on that page, a lot of the things that the course promises, will resonate with you. It talks about idea generation, how to scale, creating expertise, how to get unstuck, the ecosystem strategy, and of course, there are lots of questions that come in. So that's what the series covers. And you'll see that it's not as difficult to start up a business, but you have to have the mindset and you have to have the experience that we've gained over the years. Besides, it's a really cool series of slides and audio, professionally recorded, so I think you'll like it. Go there to Startup and check it out for yourself. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? We were at this event in Chicago, the one I was telling you right at the start of this podcast. And we had made this time-limited offer. It was that when Renuka left the room, the offer was no longer available. Well, someone got up, left the room, and ran out like crazy. And we didn't know what had happened. And before Renuka left the room, he was back. He was one of the last people to pay for that bundle that we were offering, which is the Brain Audit and 5000 BC. And Renuka was curious. Why did he stand up? Why did he leave the room? Why did he run out? And he said that when I came to this event, I'd already spent quite a bit of money on it. And I'd promised myself that I was not going to buy anything. And to keep that promise, I had to keep my credit card in the room in the third drawer, locked with a key. And when I listened to what you had to say on stage, and when I heard the presentation, so I had to run down the corridor, go in the escalator, run to the room, open the door, open the drawer, do that whole sequence, come back and make sure that I was part of whatever it is that you're doing. And that's the key. Whatever it is that you're doing, when you have a philosophy, that's what people want to be part of. It's a uniqueness that goes above marketing. It is the whole reason why you run your business. That's it from me, and I'll see you in 5000 BC, where the philosophy is be kind, be helpful, or be gone. Bye-bye.